Okay. This is going to be part 3, I think? I'm already forgetting. Oh my god. Meeting of the Minds. 3 days after I started living in the temple, a letter arrived from the high priest asking whether the ceremonial robes ordered from the Gilberta Company were ready yet. Disappointed that he hadn't written to establish a meeting, I had Rosina call for Lutz. He arrived in no time since he was at the workshop teaching the orphanage kids to do their winter handiwork. Did something happen, mine? The high priest sent me a letter asking when the ceremonial robes would be ready. Sorry, but could you ask Benno about them when he dropped by the store for lunch? And so he did, returning with the answer that they would take 3 days to finish at the absolute minimum. To give them a little leeway, I sent a reply to the high priest saying the robes would take 5 days to finish, if they worked their absolute hardest. That would hopefully prevent him from rushing them too much. When Fran brought me the high priest's response, he also had with him a letter of summons for Benno. I passed this on to Lutz when he visited my chambers to say goodbye, and gave me an update on the workshop. It looks like he's calling Lord Karstead over 7 days from now, and he wants Benno to deliver the finished robes then, I said, clinging to him all the while. Alright, I'll give it to him on my way home. But you know, mine, you haven't gotten better at all. Are you doing okay? Not really. I want to go back home at least once before the snow falls. Far from getting used to the loneliness, my homesickness was actually getting worse. It was pretty clear, too, as I was gradually spending more and more time clinging to Lutz and Thule whenever they came to my room. And Mom not being able to visit due to her pregnancy definitely wasn't helping either. You know, I won't be able to visit every day once the snow starts, right? Said Lutz with a sigh of gently patting my bed. Daddy was busy enough with his afternoon shifts that he could only visit once a week, while Thule could only visit every other day. I would get even more lonely when Lutz stopped being able to visit every day to watch over the workshop and their winter handiwork. I wish snow just didn't exist. My arms around Lutz tightened as I thought about how cold it was, cold enough for snow to start falling at any moment. On the day of the meeting, snow began to fall just before third bell. It wasn't enough for the snow to settle, but for everyone knew that winter had begun for real. Do you think it'll settle? Not yet, sister mine. There will be nothing to interrupt your meeting, assured Rosina. After finishing Heartspell practice, I was instructed on how to properly greet Karstead. Rosina had been forcing me to repeat a beautiful curtsy over and over again. The road to being elegant is not an easy one. Sister mine, Benno will be arriving this afternoon. There is not much time left to practice. Today's meeting was scheduled for fifth bell. Benno would be coming to see me in my chambers beforehand, under the guise of thanking me for giving him a connection to an archnoble. In the meantime, I had to learn a greeting respectable enough that I wouldn't embarrass myself in front of Karstead, and so I put my all into practicing. Hi, Benno, Mark. Oh, where's Lutz? Benno and Mark entered my room, the former wearing winter clothing with long sleeves in the style of nobles, and the latter carrying a box. I pursed my lips in a pout, having expected Lutz to come with them. It started snowing, so I'm having Lutz prioritize his work in the mine workshop. He should arrive with the finished handiwork soon, 1 copy of each. Make sure you bring them to the meeting. The winter handiwork? But why? I tilted my head in confusion, not understanding why Benno would want me to bring toys to a meeting with the high priest and an archnoble. My gut tells me these things are going to make a big splash. I figure now's a good time to hear what the high priest and an archnoble think about them before we put them out for the public. Assuming there's never been anything like them before, I think they'll have a really big impact, I answered after thinking back to how playing cards in Reversi had impacted Earth. And Benno glared at me with dripping displeasure. A really big impact? You blasted out paper and printing without considering the consequences at all, and yet you're warning me about how important a few toys are going to be? Well, to be clear, I do know that paper and printing are significant enough that they'll change the course of history. But my main reason for making these was because I needed them. It was hard not to know just how huge of an impact printing had on past civilizations and culture in general. And yet, to me, they were just necessary steps I had to take to get my books. What's wrong, Benno? You look kind of sick. I am, of you. We're going to be talking to the high priest and an archnoble, you know. Benno sure has a sensitive side, I thought, while Benno bent over with a hand on his stomach. I had always thought of him as a hard-boiled guy who loved to pick a fight with anyone, so it was a little weird to see him so nervous. Why are you so nervous, Benno? You've never had any problems antagonizing the guildmaster and all the vested interests. Those two are actually nice people. You'll be fine. Don't put the guildmaster on the same level as an archnoble. Whose fault do you think all this is? Shouted Benno before collapsing onto the table and pressing his forehead against it. A strand of his milk tea hair, previously slicked back with what was presumably some kind of hair gel, drooped onto the table. Master Benno, please do not beat your head against the table. Your hair is getting disheveled, noted Mark with an amused smile. Benno hatefully slicked the hair back into place before glaring at me with his dark red eyes. Bah, it's at times like these, and only times like this, that I really wish you could give me some of your blissful ignorance. What? But you're just delivering some robes, aren't you? I remember how happy you were to get a connection with an archnoble. Idiot! Use your head and think. In what world would they summon me to the temple just to deliver an order? They're going to be drilling me for all the information I have on you, ranted Benno with a glare, compelling me to point at myself in surprise. Me? What exactly do they want to learn about me? I mean, Ferdinand already got all the stuff on the memory, so why would he need to... I can expect that we'll share all the information we dug up on the head of the Ink Guild, and then we'll talk about what to do with you. I have information from the lower city, the Archnoble has information from the Nobles' Quarter, and the High Priest wants to know everything we do. Speaking of which, the High Priest had also talked about gathering information, and then I should just stay inside my room until he had finished doing so. I guess this meeting meant that he was indeed done. Benno, has anything else happened with the head of the Ink Guild? No, nothing yet. The colder it gets, the more strange people loitering about outside a store stand out. Either they don't want to push things, or they've already found out what they wanted to know and are waiting for the winter socializing to find out more. While the city was blocked in by snow, the nobles who had traveled to farming towns over the harvest festival would return to the nobles' quarter. The Archduke would be staying in the Sovereignty, the central region which held the highest position among the regions ruled by archdukes, known as duchies, for a couple of weeks at the end of spring. But the primary time for landowning nobles to socialize was the winter. That was where they met to exchange information with nobles of other provinces and strengthen old bonds. Sister mine, Master Benno, it is time. Thank you, Fran, then let us depart. I nodded at Benno and had Fran carry the finished sets of winter handiwork that Lutz had brought. After double-checking Mark's box containing the robes, we left my chambers. The corridors to the High Priest's room were cold and unforgiving, so cold that I really didn't want to leave my room at all. When we arrived, Fran rang the bell and watched the door open. Karstedt had already arrived, and I could see him gracefully drinking tea at the guest table. High Priest, Lord Karstedt, I am glad the gods ordained we meet again. To me, this is an auspicious day blessed by Geduld, the goddess of earth's warmth, and I pray that you feel the same. I had only ever seen Karstedt clad in full plate armor, but now that he was wearing the fine clothes of the nobility. His reddish-brown hair was slicked back with the same kind of gel as Benno's, and I could see at a glance that he had kind of a wide forehead. His silky velvet-esque shirt had long drooping sleeves that I had come to expect from nobles, and I could see they were made from layers of various cloth with fancy lace holding them together. His back was wide and his body visibly muscular thanks to his training, which made him a presence hard to ignore. But his fierce aura seemed more gentle now than when he had been wearing his armor, and his light blue eyes appeared a little softer today. I am glad to see you well, mine, the apprentice shrine maiden. I bless you from the bottom of my heart, Lord Karstedt. I finished my greeting without messing anything up, and Benno introduced himself in turn. We then sat down in the seats offered to us by the High Priest with our servants standing behind us. The High Priest was seated at one end of the table with Karstedt to his left, me to his right, and Benno at the other end. Thank you all for coming, said the High Priest. First we shall see the ceremonial robes. Mark took one step forward and handed the wooden box to Benno, who opened and held it out to Karstedt. Its insides were lined with cloth that enveloped the ceremonial robes, which were as deep ocean blue as the last ones, its wavy embroidery glimmering under the light of several candles that lit up the otherwise dim room. These are Sister Mine's ceremonial robes. Karstedt glanced over them, then asked me if they were what I had ordered. I nodded and confirmed that they were, having already seen the finished product and been fitted for them. In that case, I present the robes to you, Sister Mine. I shall be eternally grateful. I took the robes, and once I had them, Karstedt jutted out his chin to signal something. It was then that I first noticed the person behind him was not his attendant, but was in fact Daniel, the knight from before, perhaps serving as Karstedt's page. He handed Benno a bag with gold inside. After checking the contents, Benno handed the bag to Mark. Benno, I am told you worked exceedingly fast to complete this order. You have done well. Karstedt, Daniel, your sentences have now been fulfilled. At the High Priest's words, everyone, Benno of course, but Karstedt and Daniel as well, had let out sighs of relief. I asked Fred to take care of the box containing my robes. He nodded and removed it from the table. Attendant, step back, commanded the High Priest while putting in place a magic tool meant to prevent eavesdropping. It was a wide-range tool that affected a wider area rather than just individuals, since Benno lacked mana and could not power a tool of his own. The High Priest placed 4 face stones around us, then chanted something which sent a wall of faint blue light bursting out of the tool, enveloping us in a cube. I cannot talk. I could see the attendant standing back behind the wall of light, but couldn't hear anything from behind it. It was easy to guess that they couldn't hear anything on this side either. There sure is a magic tool for everything, I thought to myself as Benno flinched beside me. I had gotten pretty used to seeing this kind of stuff, but to people in the lower city, pretty much anything magic was cause for surprise. That said, Benno wasn't the owner of a large store for nothing. All he did was give a slight flinch without shouting or looking around like I would have in the past. Now then, Benno, we have much to discuss. Benno crossed his arms in front of his chest. My knowledge is yours. I heard that the Ink Guild began investigating mine immediately following the signing of a magic contract between them, with Lutz being their first target. Is that correct? Yes, in general, information is gathered before a contract is signed in order to influence the proceedings as favorably as possible, explained Benno. I cannot imagine why they would begin gathering information after the contract was signed. The High Priest nodded and looked at me. Have you met the head of the Ink Guild before mine? No. Benno hid me while the contract was being negotiated, so I knew neither his name nor his face. The head of the Ink Guild has deep connections with nobles, began Benno, and not much good is said about him. I determined that minimizing Sister Mine's contact with him would be ideal, and had her wait in another room while he visited. He explained why he hadn't let me meet the head of the Ink Guild, which made the High Priest let out a laugh with a slight grin of approval. You are a wise man indeed, Benno. I applaud your decision. The man you are speaking of is Wolf, correct? What rumors have you heard? What led you to conclude that he would bring harm to the apprentice shrine maiden? The High Priest and Karstead asked Benno a stream of questions. I knew nothing about the head of the Ink Guild, and thus had no choice but to remain silent. Wolf is the head of the Ink Guild, yes. I had heard that he is willing to engage in criminal acts to strengthen his relationships with nobles. But I knew not whether those rumors were true, so please forgive my lack of details. Karstead, his brow furrowed, rubbed his chin. In that case, I would assume he started gathering information so brazenly because the contract has been signed, and so he no longer cares if your relationship suffers. The suggestion made Benno widen his eyes. It wasn't easy to void a magic contract, which necessitated significant preparation before one was signed. But thinking about it another way, that also meant it didn't matter how blatantly antagonistic the Ink Guild were now that it was signed. After all, even if they escalated things to the point of harming me, the contract wouldn't be voided without the consent of all parties involved. Karstead surmised the Ink Guild had exploited that, and for a second I saw an extremely bitter grimace on Benno's face. Benno, what do you think Wolf stands to gain from gathering information on mine? I would like to hear your perspectives as both a merchant and one who lives in the lower city, asked the High Priest. Benno chose his words carefully. To us merchants, Sister Mine's value is her knowledge of seemingly infinite new products, though few knew how much she is truly worth. If Wolf were one of those few, he would no doubt seek to bring her into the Ink Guild. But Sister Mine has already joined the Merchants Guild and my Gilberta Company, in which case he likely intends to rely either on money to gather what knowledge he can, kidnap her to extract her knowledge, or take those dear to her hostage to blackmail her. Karstead looked at me dubiously. He was no doubt thinking it impossible that a girl as young as myself would have knowledge that valuable. However, it is my belief that he would not be able to learn everything she knows, even through kidnapping and blackmail, Benno continued. To maximize the amount he gained from her, he would need to keep her confined in an isolated location for extended periods of time, which would be exceedingly strenuous. And that could result in her dying, essentially. I shuddered at the thought of that coming true, having not considered the possibility that someone would kidnap and imprison me for my knowledge. I finally understood just how well Benno had been treating me, and the thought of what could have happened had I met someone else instead sent some more shivers down my spine. Why would keeping her confined be strenuous? Karstead asked casually. It should be simple, as long as the kidnappers have a spare room or country mansion. Surely the kidnapping itself would be more of a challenge. The fact he spoke about confining people so knowledgeably scared me. If her kidnapper is not fully aware of Sister Mine's poor health, she will die under their care in a matter of days. In Sister Mine's case, the confinement will be more strenuous than the kidnapping. Yes, I must agree. She spent days bedridden with sickness after only half a day in the repentance chamber. If treated as a standard prisoner, she would die before being able to teach them anything of value. The High Priest agreed with Benno on the spot. It seemed that the repentance chamber incident had really stuck with him. I wish he would just forget it, though. I got fevers like that all the time. It wasn't anybody's fault. Also, while he was at it, I wish he would forget that I was the only blue shrine maiden to ever be put in the repentance chamber. It's likely, then, that Wolf plans to sell her off to nobles after learning what he can from her, concluded Karstead. Benno furrowed his brows in confusion. I know that Sister Mine suffers from the devouring, but is there another reason why nobles would want her? The High Priest exchanged a glance with Karstead, then gave Benno a nod. I do not intend to inform you of all the details, but yes, there is another reason. As mentioned, it's most likely that Wolf intends to sell Mine to nobles after getting his hands on her. But it's also possible that a noble has ordered Wolf to kidnap her so they can stage a rescue and indebt her to them. Once she's rescued, they might even claim that she was their child all along. It's also possible that a wider quest for vengeance plays a part in this, which means the threat of assassination must be considered. God, I can already hear Benno demanding to know what I've done. I can hardly hear the yelling, not the thunder, anything but the thunder. Prior to the High Priest listing out every possibility one by one, I had just thought that the Inkia probing for information about me was kind of gross and nothing more. It hadn't even occurred to me that I was in that much danger. Now I can understand why the High Priest had ordered me to stay in my chambers. Benno, began the High Priest, you will continue to hide information from your business associates. Mine will not be leaving the temple over the winter. When she leaves her chambers, it will only be to perform rituals or visit the orphanage. With Great Priests accompanying her, she should be safe. Our true problem begins in spring. His words earned him nods from both Benno and Cardstep, because they too will be gathering information and allies over the winter, Benno elaborated. We must think of a plan at once, Benno. What means are there to control this thing? Said the High Priest, referring to me. Benno, everyone looked in my direction. Eventually, Benno shook his head slowly with an exhausted expression. I do not know. She can escalate something to a ridiculous degree in a matter of moments, and if you take your eyes off her, she could be on death's door by the next bell. If I knew a way to keep her under control, I would already be using it. As expected, I suppose, keeping her within arm's reach is all one can do. The High Priest and Benno both looked at me and gave heavy sighs in unison. They then looked at each other with wry smiles. It seemed they had bonded. Yeah, over the craziness that you are mine. Mine, you cause problems every time you do anything. From now on, you will get my or Benno's permission before taking any new course of action or developing any new product, said the High Priest, reminding me of the orphanage's winter handiwork. Benno's keen acumen had once again saved me. I picked up the bundle of winter handiwork that Fran had left on the floor for me. I imagine you'll want to see these then. It's the winter handiwork I'm having the orphanage do. Ah, I do remember you mentioning something like that. Show me. I pulled out the playing cards, reversey, and faux chess, lining them up next to each other along the table. Benno leaned forward to look at them too, since although he had heard me explain each one before, he had never actually seen them. What are these? These are playing cards. There are a lot of games you can play with them, but I intend to start off by teaching the kids in the orphanage to play a game called Concentration. You mix the cards up, then lay them on the table with the art side facing down. You then flip them over two cards, and if both are the same number, you keep them. Whoever has the most cards at the end of the game wins. So essentially, dang it. A matching game, essentially. It was harder for the younger kids to hold a full hand of wooden cards in their small hands, so Concentration was the only game I was planning on showing them for the time being. The rules intrigued Cardstep, so we started playing, using only half the deck to save time. Suffice it to say that the High Priest with his superb memory absolutely crushed us. Of course. Of course! Like I said, there are a lot of games you can play with them. They'll be easier to use once we've worked out a formula for thicker paper and can make them out of that instead of wood. I taught them about blackjack, poker, and hearts, among other games, and it looked like Cardstep was pretty pleased by the cards overall. We have fortune-telling cards that are activated using mana, but no cards made for amusement. And most of all, it's good that you can play so many games with just one deck of cards. No doubt these will grow very popular with nobles. Oh, definitely, considering they won't have anything to do during the winter. Definitely. They're also good for learning numbers. I made them so that the kids in the orphanage can learn to do math, I explained. The High Priest nodded before pointing to the reversey board. What about this, then? This is reversey. There are tiles called stones, painted black on one side and white on the other. You place the stone in the box, and when stones of one color get stuck between stones of the other, they change colors. Whoever has the most stones of their color in the end wins. The High Priest seemed the most interested in reversey. We started playing, me as his opponent, and I explained the rules as we went. Stones were placed, stones were flipped, and after all the stones were filled, the board was covered in white. I had won. I lost. It's hard to win right after learning the rules. I'm sure you'll start beating me after we play a few more games, I shrugged, as the High Priest stared at the board in the daze. He doesn't like to lose. He doesn't lose. Ha ha. I had beat the High Priest since he was playing reversey for the first time and didn't know any of the strategies. But he was smart enough that he would work them out for himself before long. I had gone all out on him, specifically because I knew this was my only opportunity to beat him. Then we shall play again. I will win this time. High Priest, let's save the rematch for next time. I'll play you again if you buy the game. Very well, consider it purchased. Benno's shoulders trembled just a little bit after seeing the High Priest buy it instantly. He gave me a subtle good job sign beneath the table. Ahem. And finally, what are these? Oh, these are chess pieces. They're played on the same board as reversey. Each type of piece moves in a different way, and you win by moving one of your pieces onto your opponent's king. I cleaned up the reversey stones and explained how each chess piece moved, while Karsten looked at the board with narrowed, contemplative eyes. This looks like Gwynnin, whatever. Oh, so another game like this exists. Should I make some changes so they're not similar? My understanding was that even on Earth, board games had existed for a very long time. It was only natural that this world would have something similar. No need, it's a game played among nobles, and it requires mana. The game is to take territory, and the fighting strategies are completely different. This game will do just fine in the lower city, I imagine. I don't think they'll sell much at all if nobles aren't buying them. There weren't many people in the lower city rich enough to spend money on something that was purely for entertainment. Just about everyone had their hands full just keeping their families alive. My safest bet would be to bundle chess with Versi and market it as an alternate way of playing Gewinin. With our discussion on the winter handiwork over, the high priest took down the soundproof barrier. He and Karstedt summoned their attendants, then purchased the Reversi boards, the stone, the playing cards, respectfully. I sold them at 4 large silvers, a premium price since we weren't planning to sell them until spring started. Considering that I anticipated their market prices started at around 5 or 7 small silvers, we kind of ripped them off. Oh, Benno is rubbing off on you, girl. Make as much money as you can. Our association continues to be fruitful, Benno, I suppose. May you be blessed with the divine protection of the subordinate gods guarding Geduld, the goddess of earth. I thank you for your time, honorable high priest. If you will excuse me, I will now take my leave. It has been a pleasure, Lord Karstedt, sister mine. Benno crossed his arms before his chest and exited, Mark doing the same behind him before following suit. After seeing them go, I looked at the high priest. In that case, I believe I shall depart as well. It has been We have more to discuss with you. Take this. He set 4 of the sound-blocking magic tools he often used down onto the table. The high priest, Karstedt, and I each took one, with Daniel reaching for the one remaining. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, I'm going to continue. Punishment for the Knight's Order and my future. Benno left the room, and Daniel headed to the newly empty seat. I yet stood up myself, thinking that as a commoner I should sit at the foot of the table, but the high priest stopped me. Stay seated where you are, mine. What? But... I glanced at Daniel, but he just looked at me, the corners of his gray eyes crinkled in a calm smile as he sat down. It would have been a bit much for me to force him off the seat so I could sit there myself, so I just sat back down where I was. Once everyone was in their seats, the high priest looked over at all those gathered. Now then, mine, I will explain to you what punishment the Archduke decreed after being informed of the incidents during the Tromba extermination. The punishments? I expected that Shikikoza was going to be punished, but I didn't want to know what the punishment would be. All I wanted was to never see him again. As if sensing that, the high priest lowered his eyes. It is not hard to imagine that this is not information you wish to know, and I myself am hesitant to inform you of the matters of the nobility, but this information will be essential in preparing you for your future. He let out a sigh and then looked at Karstedt and Daniel before dryly continuing his explanation. The Archduke was extremely displeased that a knight assigned to protect the apprentice Shrine Maiden not only harmed her, but made the extermination more difficult. First, he ordered Karstedt to be more strict in his training of newcomers, and docked his pay for 3 months. He also ordered him to provide 1/4 of the funds for your new robes. Now, as for Shikikoza, a knight who refuses to listen to orders in battle would bring only harm to his fellows, and by attacking the one he had been assigned to protect, he has dishonored himself as a knight. The Archduke has determined that a knight of the Knight's Order disobeying orders and abandoning his duty was worthy of a grave punishment. Thus, the Archduke decreed that Shikikoza was to be executed. Under normal circumstances, his entire family would be punished alongside him. But as that would likely earn you only more ire mine, the Archduke gave Shikikoza's father 2 choices. He could either allow his family to be punished, or he could sign a contract to never deal with you again and pay a hefty fee. If he signed the contract and paid the fee, his family would escape punishment, and Shikikoza would be recorded as having died an honorable death in battle. I swallowed hard. Not for a second had I expected that the Archduke would have Shikikoza executed. Considering that Shikikoza was a noble and I was a commoner, I figured he would get a light punishment at worst. Shikikoza's father paid the fee and swore not to involve himself with you. Said fee went toward paying half the cost of your robes. And so it was written that Shikikoza died honorably in battle while serving the Knight's Order. Well then wait, So his mother is still raising a stink over this later on down the road, at least in the anime anyway. I realized then that the execution had already happened. I reflexively looked at Daniel, knowing that him sitting there meant he had avoided being executed, but maybe he had been given some other harsh punishment? The high priest looked at Daniel as well, likely having noticed my gaze. Daniel paid 1/4 of the cost of your robes, and was demoted to the rank of apprentice for 1 year. His sentence was lightened solely due to your defense of him. My defense? Yeah, you did defend him. You told him that he had tried to protect you, even by going against his superior, and not that he didn't, yeah. I didn't recall defending him, especially not in any official setting. I cocked my head to the side in confusion, and Daniel smiled as he let a friendly laugh. You defended me in front of Lord Ferdinand, remember? You said I had been kind to you, warned Shikikoza off, and attempted to help you. If you hadn't, I would have been punished just as harshly as Shikikoza was. It seemed that under normal circumstances, he would have been executed all the same for failing to protect me. But my word had provided evidence that Daniel had tried to stop him, but could do nothing due to being of lower status than Shikikoza, which lessened his sentence. He had been demoted back to the rank of apprentice, despite having finally come of age. But considering the alternative was being executed alongside Shikikoza, that was hardly anything at all. My family was bottom of the barrel, even among lay nobles, and my whole life had been walked over by people of higher status than me. Almost nobody's ever stuck their neck out and helped me before. It's hard to describe how happy I was when I learned you had asked for Lord Ferdinand to lighten my sentence. I got the feeling he was exaggerating the significance of what I had done, but judging by how unfair his upbringing seemed to me, I could guess that even lay nobles had it rough despite being nobles. The high priest spoke up. Furthermore, Daniel has been assigned to be your bodyguard during his year as an apprentice. Bodyguard? You truly are in significant danger, said the high priest, looking over me with his light gold eyes before turning to Karlstedt. But you have no sense of self-preservation, so we will need to explain. Karlstedt met his gaze and nodded slowly before looking me right in the eye. His light blue eyes that had looked a little softer just moments ago hardened once more. It is now known to all Norwich nobles that there exists an apprentice shrine maiden with value to be exploited. Karlstedt began. You were given blue robes despite your low-born status, you accompanied the knight's order, and you completed your duty with an enormous display of mana that all those in the order saw. The fact that the Archduke himself permitted you to wear blue robes has only given weight to the rumors of your worth. The Knight's Order was a gathering of nobles. If escorting me as a commoner and treating me as such would bring misfortune upon their houses, as it had Shikikoza's, then there had to approach from another angle. Apparently it was only natural for nobles to immediately consider ways they could exploit me once they found out that what the high priest had said and how much mana I had. You are a devouring commoner that nobody has signed a contract with, but everyone knows you are in Lord Ferdinand's custody. We believe a significant number of nobles will begin currying favor with Lord Ferdinand and the Archduke, while approaching you on seemingly friendly terms so that they may one day exploit you. If we assume that Wolf, the head of the Ink Guild, was connected to these nobles, then Karlstedt had an idea what might be happening. A noble who wanted to exploit you might have Wolf kidnap you so that they can then rescue you, putting you in debt of gratitude to them. When dealing with nobles, one must always assume they are attempting to take advantage of others. And if you keep that in mind, your life should not be at risk, barring extenuating circumstances. But no such guarantees can be made for your friends and family. The high priest continued for him. For example, it is possible that those working alongside Wolf will have you kidnapped, then sold to the Archduke of an opposing duchy, who will then claim that you were his daughter all along. In that case, your actual family will be nothing but an obstacle, a reminder of the truth. They would therefore be silenced, one way or another. The high priest's prediction was so grim that I gasped in shock. The very thought of putting my family in danger sent a shiver running down my spine. I balled my fists tightly in my lap, but I couldn't stop them from trembling. And on top of everything, Daniel explained to me from his perspective as a lay noble how nobles thought of me. Most lay nobles are still full of scorn and contempt toward you. They don't want to accept that a low-born commoner has so much mana. And honestly, I would have had a hard time believing a devouring commoner could have that much mana myself had I not seen it with my own eyes. It seemed that the lay nobles were more concerned with hating me out of envy than exploiting me. But no lay noble would oppose Lord Ferdinand head-on, Daniel continued, eyeing Karlstedt and the high priest nervously. If they do anything, it'll be through arch-nobles, and in my opinion, I think you're most at risk from people who have more personal reasons to hate you. Shikikoza's father is more concerned with the continuation of their house than anything, but his mother isn't, said Karlstedt. They have been forced to give Shikikoza to the temple due to family circumstances and his small amount of mana, and she was really happy when he finally returned home thanks to the sovereignty's purge. I've heard that she hates you with all her heart, sister mine. I shuddered. From my own experience, I could sympathize well with the seething rage one might feel from losing a family member. I couldn't even imagine how furious I myself would be with anyone who had hurt my own family. And right now, that fury was being directed at me. I could live with that if that fury ended with me, but I was terrified of it being aimed at my friends and family. Dangerous nobles who might attempt an assassination. Are there any nobles foolish enough to bring their house down out of spite? Asked the high priest. I clenched my fist in my lap, waiting for Daniel's answer. With a sad expression, he whispered, I don't know. If Shikikoza's mother actually does harm Sister Mine, their house will be finished for sure. But a woman's wrath knows no bounds, and I don't know what it would drive her to do. I can't know. Karsta's eyebrows sank into a deep frown. If she's willing to destroy her house to satisfy her lust for revenge, the situation may be worse than we thought. It seemed that nobles were generally restrained by the fear of ruining their house, the honor of their ancestors, and the lives of their family. I never thought Wolf or Shigiko's mom could be so dangerous, said Daniel. It turned out that Wolf regularly went to the nobles' quarter to sell ink. He was somewhat well known among nobles, since they were the ones who most purchased and used ink. However, none of them knew that he was known in the lower city as a criminal who would do anything to strengthen his connection with the nobility. My plan had been to raise you here as an apprentice shrine maiden so that you could one day wed into a noble house, but now that plan will have to change, said the high priest. What? Is he saying he was going to make me marry a noble? I don't think I'd agree to that. It sure isn't something I'd ever consider myself, but that's in the future. I blinked in confusion, failing to fully grasp what the high priest was saying. I would rather not try to plan my life out like that. Especially when it came to something as important as marriage. Just think of what poor man would be forced to marry me for fear of going against the high priest's authority. I would feel so bad for him. I wasn't planning on marrying any nobles. I believe I told you that regardless of whether you intended to sign with a noble, you would one day bear the children of a noble. I had thought to culture you here and give you experience as a shrine maiden so that one might accept you as a wife, but the situation has changed. Because, it was either she'd be accepted as a wife or as a mistress, depending on how she conducted herself. I certainly did remember him saying something like that when we were talking about Rosina becoming my attendant. It seemed that even though then the high priest had already intended to play the matchmaker for me. Just how much did this man love to give himself extra work? A lot. As I was caught up in awe of just how earnest the high priest was and how extreme his sense of responsibility was, he glanced over at Karstad. Mind, it is also likely that you, your friends, and your family will be in danger if you remain on your own. It is for everyone's benefit that you are adopted by a noble as soon as possible. Being adopted by a noble meant cutting myself off from my family and living with nobles in the noble quarter. I'll have to leave my family again, completely this time. A tremble ran through my heart. Fear had been bubbling up within me as my time alone in the temple went on. Fear that my bonds of my family were weakening in their absence. And all that fear exploded at once. Karstad will be able to protect you to some degree if he adopts you, and I can guarantee the strength of his character. Will you do it, Karstad? Anything for a friend, Lord Ferdinand. The conversation continued without me as I watched on in a daze. Karstad leaned forward to get a closer look at me. He was an arch-noble, his eyes crinkled warmly, and his muscular body was primed to protect me. Considering how much trust the high priest had in him, I could guess that I would find no better adoptive parent anywhere else. We'll see about that in the future. Mine, will you become my adopted daughter? No. I shot down his act of goodwill with a single word. Everyone stared at me, their eyes wide with a mix of surprise and disbelief. Sister mine, began Daniel in a panic, an adoption like this is better than anything you could wish for. Why would you turn down Lord Ferdinand and Lord Karstad's kindness? Calm down, Daniel. Mine, why do you refuse? The high priest's quiet voice was tinged with anger. But still, I couldn't say yes. It's just not possible. Spending the whole winter alone in the temple is already breaking my heart. I can't agree to leave my family for the rest of my life. I just can't. Well, you do end up doing that later, but still. It was either that or they get killed, but still. I shook my head hard, and as I did, I could feel my mana stir together with my swelling emotions. It was surging up from within me. I want to go home. I don't want to leave my family ever again. Calm down, mine, exclaimed the high priest as he stood up with a clatter from his chair, immediately pushing a clear thumb-sized gemstone against my forehead. The stone turned light yellow in mere moments. A nigh instantaneous change which made the high priest balk. Karstad, Daniel, do you have any empty face stones? Sir. Karstad and Daniel both hurriedly pulled out face stones, which the high priest grabbed before picking me up and striding into his hidden room. I shall take her to my workshop to minimize the damage. Upon entering the room, he sat down on the bench, sat me down in front of him, and then put another face stone to my forehead. Stone after stone changed colors, and I could feel the mana stirring within me being sucked away. I know we are so close to the dedication ritual, but still, you have let too much mana build up within you. So foolish. That's because I've been stuck in my chambers lately, and not offering out my mana. It felt like my emotions had been sucked out along with the mana. I wiped the tears from my eyes and let out a sigh, but still, despite all that, the heat attempting to rampage inside of me had not been entirely quelled. And I lacked the energy to squash it back into its box. I have to say, you seemed quite mentally unstable there. Did something happen? It's all your fault. If you hadn't dug through my memories... Thanks to the High Priest's magic tool, I had remembered with perfect clarity a world and a time I could never return to. I saw my old mom, talked to her, and ached for the family I had lost. I had been so busy here that I had done my best not to think about my past family, but he had dug the memories up and left a hole in my heart that would not heal. Which was exactly why I resolved to do my best to make sure I didn't lose my new family, and why I had heard that immediately after making that decision, I had been forced to stay inside the temple. I was still overcome by a feeling of loss since I hadn't had time to heal by spending any time with my family. So that is why then. The High Priest glanced away, his brow furrowed with regret. It hit me that he hadn't used the magic tool because he wanted to, and that he had been hit with the weight of my emotions too while we were synchronized. I cursed myself for my lack of tact. I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that, I said, squeezing the High Priest's sleeve as he pressed yet another face down against my forehead. You had to do what you did to make sure I'm not a threat, and it's thanks to that I'm still alive at all. I know you did the right thing. It's just, when I think about the family I'll never see again, I remember how important my new family is to me. But I have to spend all winter here alone. It's so lonely I could just die. And if you tell me now that I'll never be able to see them again at all, maybe I will. My heart started to hurt as I confessed how I felt, and the tears welling in my eyes made the High Priest's face distort in front of me. Mine, contain yourself. I'll never see my family again if a noble adopts me. Mine. The High Priest, his voice risen in a panic, grabbed my arm and pulled me toward him. I fell into his arms and was soon enveloped in his long, drooping sleeves. I looked up at the High Priest, blinking in surprise, and saw him grimacing as he looked back down at me. Hugs such as this will calm me, correct? Yes? Our positions were the reverse of what they had been after using the magic tool. Hearing the High Priest struggle to say hug was kind of cute, and I let out a small giggle. But it was kind of uncomfortable for him to hug me while I was standing, so I sat on his lap and searched for a more comfortable position. Mind, it seems that you have already calmed down. Not yet. I couldn't wrap my arms around the High Priest like I could with Thule and Lutz. All I could do was lean against him while sitting on his thigh. This is perfect, just keep squeezing me. I don't think this is perfect at all, he said with a frown, but did as I asked without untangling himself from me. His warmth and steady breathing calmed the storm in my heart. Only after seeing that I had well and truly calmed down, did the High Priest murmur in exasperated, "What can be done with you?" Then, like chastising a rebellious child, he explained to me why I had no choice but to be adopted by a noble. Unlike a normal devouring child, you possess an enormous amount of mana, far too much to be ignored. Do I really have that much mana? I can imagine that I have more mana than most people due to how the knights reacted during the healing ritual, but I hadn't thought it was an enormous amount. The High Priest's expression tightened as he looked down at me. It is too much mana for an average noble to contain, even after contracting with you, and it must be considered that your capacity for mana will grow as you do. You will need to learn to control the mana packed within you, and master the techniques necessary for putting it to good use. Apparently, I would need to become a noble's adopted daughter so that I could go to the Royal Academy and learn about mana, about magic, and the ways to use it. A noble who signed with me would need to prepare magic tools that could consume a seriously enormous amount of my mana, so as not to put those around me at risk. But there were barely any nobles in the city who had magic tools that could withstand my enormous amount of mana. Your mana is too much for a sole noble to keep to themselves. It must be used for the sake of the duchy, for the sake of the country. I'm not sure I understand. Ever since learning I was sick with the devouring, I had been told that I would need to sign with a noble to calm the heat, and survive. It was hard to believe I had so much mana that not even that was an option for me. It didn't feel real. It felt like it was happening to someone else, not me. You need to face reality, mine. You endanger the lives of all those around you just by getting emotional. And if you do not learn to control your emotions, it's likely that one day you may hurt even your precious family. But that won't happen so long as I'm with them. The reason I got like this in the first place is because I missed them. The problem was being kept separate from my family. As long as I was with them, I could live in peace. So please, don't take me away from my family, I said. The High Priest shut his eyes tightly, knitting his eyebrows. It was clear by the look on his face that he was enduring a mind-induced headache, which made me feel just a little guilty. I knew I was asking for the impossible from him, but I just couldn't remain stable without my family. There was no helping that. My heart wanted what it wanted. 10 years, murmured the High Priest, seeming to have selected an age out of nowhere. I looked up at him in confusion, and the High Priest shook his head with exasperation, while setting me down from his lap. The Royal Academy begins accepting students when they are 10 years of age. That is when you must go. Until then, you may remain with your family, visiting the temple to offer up your mana as you have been. However, added the High Priest, his expression hardening to show that he was drawing a firm line, I will not listen to your protests after that. If you are determined to be a danger to others, you will be executed and your family along with you. None will be spared. Remember this well. Even the baby? You would kill a baby. That's harsh. It seemed that the high priest wouldn't budge on me being adopted once I was 10. I put a hand on my chest as the weight of having a limited amount of time left of my family hit me. Okay, I'm going to have to end this here. I'll see y'all next time.